A man saw a wolf with a baby on a grave. When he found out who the baby's father was, he started to cry. Stephen Davis had a tough life. He was born into a very poor family and was the youngest of 6 siblings. Everything he had as a kid was passed down from his older brothers and sisters. But once a year on his birthday, Stephen got to choose his own gift. When he was about 12 years old, he found a tiny, abandoned puppy while walking down the street. He liked the puppy right away and took it home. Stephen showed the puppy to his parents and asked if he could keep it. At first, they said no, but after he begged and promised to take care of the puppy, they agreed. They said it would be his birthday gift that year, and he named the puppy Crystal. Stephen and Crystal grew up together for 12 years, but then Crystal passed away when she was 12 years old. Stephen was very sad about losing his best friend, but having Crystal showed him how much he loved dogs. For the next few decades, Stephen struggled through life. Unfortunately, he was fired from his job due to cutbacks and was unable to find any more work due to his age. With no other options left, Stephen decided to move back home to his small village and live in a little rundown shack on the edge of the forest that surrounded his village. While it might not have been the nicest looking place, it was somewhere warm and dry where the man could sleep. One day, not long after moving into the shack, Stephen was out on a walk in the forest when all of a sudden he heard a small whimpering sound. Curious about what it could be, he headed towards the noise, but what he found shocked him. In a little clearing between some trees, Stephen found the body of a deceased adult wolf and a tiny cub curled up next to her. It looked as if the adult wolf had gotten caught in an old hunter's trap and hadn't managed to free herself. Her cub had stuck close to its mother as it had no idea what else it should do. The sight that Stephen found broke his heart. He had always thought that wolves were majestic creatures and held a great love for them due to their relation to dogs. Seeing no other option, as he simply couldn't leave the tiny cub to fend for itself, Stephen approached the baby wolf. Upon seeing the human getting closer to it, the small canine began growling and trying to warn Stephen away. But after a bit of coaxing and reassurances that he wouldn't hurt the animal, Stephen managed to get the cub to come closer to him until he was able to reach out and pick it up. Once safely in his arms, Stephen took the cub back to his home. Once there, Stephen looked after the cub and raised it as if it were his very own dog. The man made sure to feed the cub, who he had named Jasper, a variety of fresh meat that he had either hunted himself or managed to get scraps of from the butcher. He knew that as a wolf, Jasper would need a lot of food, and that it would have to be different from what a normal dog would eat due to the wolf's wild instincts. Thankfully, Stephen knew exactly how to look after the wolf, and the two spent the next couple of years living peacefully together in the little shack. But one day, something big happened. It had been 3 long years since Stephen first moved into his small house near the forest. During that time, things in the economy got even worse, and Stephen didn't have much money. He often didn't have enough to eat, but he was thankful for Jasper, the wolf. Jasper would snuggle up to Stephen at night and keep him warm in the cold. Stephen knew that without Jasper, he might freeze to death in the upcoming winter. Then one evening, as Stephen was getting ready for bed, he noticed that Jasper hadn't come back from his usual forest adventure. Stephen used to let Jasper roam around the forest during the day, but every night without fail, the wolf would come back home and sleep next to Stephen. Worried about the wolf, the old man stepped out of his home and called out for Jasper, but the animal didn't respond. This happened every night for the next week, and with every passing day, Stephen grew more and more worried. Finally, after a week of waiting for Jasper to return, Stephen decided to look for the wolf himself. The old man first set off into the woods to see if he could find his furry friend amongst the trees, but sadly, there was no sign of the animal. Not wanting to give up, Stephen kept searching until he stumbled across the old church, which stood on the outskirts of the village. It was here that the old man made a remarkable discovery. As Stephen approached the old church, he suddenly saw a large gray shape lying on one of the graves. Immediately, Stephen knew that it was Jasper, and he quickly walked over to his missing friend. But when he approached the wolf and called out his name, something strange happened. Instead of getting up to greet the old man like he normally would have, Jasper stayed curled up on the grave. Curious about what was wrong with the wolf, Stephen approached the animal, but what he discovered froze him to the spot. There, huddled into the wolf's soft fur, was a tiny baby. Stephen knew then why Jasper hadn't been back to visit him. The wolf had been keeping the tiny human alive. Instantly concerned about the baby's health, Stephen reached down and picked the child up. Thankfully, the baby was still alive. However, he was definitely very hungry if his cries were anything to go by. Stephen and Jasper returned to their shack, where the old man immediately called the police to let them know what he had found. The police thanked him for the information and told him that someone would come out to get the baby and take it somewhere safe. Stephen agreed and then settled down on his bed with the child and the wolf to wait for the police. A few hours passed when all of a sudden, Stephen heard a frantic knocking on his front door. Slightly worried about who could be knocking on his door in such a manner, the old man hesitantly opened the door. But he never would have expected who he found on the other side. There, standing just outside his home, was an impeccably dressed middle-aged man with the most hopeful look on his face that Stephen had ever seen. The old man asked the stranger what he was doing banging on the door so harshly. The stranger then replied that the police had told him that Stephen had found a baby and that he was hoping beyond all hope that it was his lost son. Feeling sorry for the man, Stephen invited him inside his home. Once inside, the old man showed the stranger the child, and the man fell to his knees with tears of relief. It turned out that the baby that Jasper and Stephen had found was, in fact, the stranger's son. But why was he at the church all alone? Stephen asked the man. It was at this moment that the man introduced himself as William Parker, the multimillionaire and heir to one of the richest companies in the world. It turned out that William's wife, Henrietta, had given birth to their son Kenneth not too long ago, but had sadly fallen ill not long after having Kenneth. As he was distraught about the loss of his wife, some kidnappers had thought that it was the perfect time to steal Kenneth away for a large ransom. However, while hiding in the little church at the edge of the village, Jasper had heard the young baby's cries of distress and had rushed to his rescue. After scaring away the bad people, the wolf stayed with the baby to keep it safe until Stephen found them. When he was finally reunited with his son, William asked Stephen to live with him and Kenneth as a way to say thanks for saving his son's life. Stephen was really surprised and happy. He would finally have a real home to live in. He said yes, but he wanted to make sure his wolf friend Jasper could come and go freely. William agreed because he knew Jasper also helped save his son. So, after facing many difficult times, Stephen was going to have the happy life he always wanted. And he could have as many dogs as he liked, although none of them could ever replace his amazing friend Jasper. What do you think of this story? Let us know in the comments section. Thank you.